Thank you for joining the webinar today. We're going to go over Mercury Thermostats, a historical overview and review of the current legislation. My name is Ryan Kiskadden, and I am the Director of National Accounts for the Thermostat Recycling Corporation. So what is the Thermostat Recycling Corporation? We are an industry stewardship program that manages the end-of-life Mercury thermostat. We were a nonprofit, and still we are today. That was founded nearly 20 years ago by Honeywell, White Rogers, and General Electric. But today we have 30 manufacturers that participate. We've collected over 9 tons of mercury since the program started. And these products, for those on the call unfamiliar with what a mercury thermostat is, have been in commerce for about 50 years. About hundreds of millions of units have been sold. I guarantee at some point in your life you have seen a mercury thermostat that controls your heating, ventilating, and air conditioning equipment. Many of the major OEMs that have made HVAC participate in this program. The program was funded in 1998 and still is in funding today. Here's a simple diagram on how the thermostat recycling program works. First of all, as mercury thermostats are being removed from service, it depends on the state and the federal regulation, but these need to be recycled in 1 year's time. The best way to do so is to use the Thermostat Recycling Corporation program. You can do so by going onto our website, finding the zip code finder, and finding a local place to you that you can drop off these devices. Once you drop those off and a bin is full, the collection point will send the thermostat recycling container to us where we process them in our facility in Golden Valley, Minnesota. After the processing is complete, the empty bin is returned and the process is started all over again. This is a prepaid program, and the green bin that you see here has the FedEx label inside of it, a liner to keep the mercury thermostats inside, and is a sturdy container for shipping this universal waste. A brief history of what mercury is. First of all, it is known as a biotoxin. It does have the nickname Quicksilver, and it is on the periodic table. It's element number 80. It's believed to have been first discovered back in 1500 BC with the Egyptian tombs. Oddly enough, they believe that it prolonged life, it could heal fractures, and it maintained good health. But this is a natural found element deep within the Earth's crust. And as major manufacturing found out, it's a pretty reliable source of manufacturing material that helps systems work better. So as you see here, it's actually first used to extract silver from mines in Peru and Spain. So mines in the United States and Mexico and also Italy, they've been mined out currently. They're not in production anymore, and there's been low demand for mercury. We'll get into why there's low demand for mercury today. And here in the United States, the last mine was in Nevada, which is called the McDermott Mine, which closed in 1992, and it was the last of its kind. Today, the European Union had, as of 2005, opened up a directive which allowed mining for mercury available in some countries, specifically China, that allowed it for CFL light bulbs. Mercury is also very toxic if it's spilled. It can pollute the air, land, and water. That's why it's heavily regulated. And you've seen today, those that watch the global politics on mercury, the Minamata Convention that is helping to regulate and have bigger buy-in globally on how to deal with mercury contamination. The first piece of legislation I will cover on this call is what is affectionately known as MEBA, or the United States Mercury Export Ban. This law became so in 2008, called the Mercury Export Ban Act of 2008. It aims to reduce the use of mining for commercial purposes globally, but the ban really took effect in January 1st, 2013, where it went after such things as major manufacturing in the 48 contiguous states, and it also had a provision that required the Department of Energy to designate and operate a facility for the long-term management and storage of elemental mercury. Today, it's estimated that the largest holders of this elemental mercury is the Department of Defense and Department of Energy. The program that Thermostat Recycling Corporation runs may be estimated somewhere in the top 5. The next bit of legislation that covers mercury thermostats is what is also known as RCRA, or the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. This is a federal law that regulates hazardous waste disposal. It does include things such as mercury-containing equipment, such as Mercury switch thermostats. One of the items that it specifies is it must be recycled if it comes out of a commercial buildings to any state, and this particularly to Mercury switch thermostats. Now, certain states are more restrictive of this particular law when thermostats are being removed from the structure, and there are disposal bans, contractor provisions that require recycling, wholesaler mandatory participation, and also HVAC manufacturers funding of a take-back program. You may know about CFL light bulbs, but a Mercury switch thermostat has 1,000 times more mercury than a CFL, and it is regulated under RCRA as demonstrated here. So to really fully understand the legal obligations with regards to disposal of mercury thermostats, you have to look at three areas of regulation. One is RCRA. Two, within RCRA, the lessening of the universal waste regulation, which we'll get into next. And then three, what the state-specific regulation is regarding mercury thermostats. Universal waste. In 1998, the EPA added mercury-containing equipment to the universal waste rule. The types of waste in universal waste are frequently thrown in the trash by unregulated households and small businesses. Classifying an item as universal waste provided flexibility for its proper management and can prevent the item from entering municipal trash. Instead, it can be readily collected and disposed of at a hazardous waste facility or a collection program, such as the Thermostat Recycling Corporation's program. Mercury-containing equipment includes devices, items, and articles that do vary in the amount of elemental mercury, but it could include things such as thermostats, barometers, manometers, temperature and pressure gauges, mercury switches, such as lights in automobiles, pesticides, lamps, etc. By lessening of RCRA through the Universal Waste Amendment listed here, meant that a collection program could be used on a job site, be held at a collection point, without an EPA number and without a requirement for manifesting during the shipment of this particular waste. And as you can see here, the TRC is listed on the EPA website. We are an approved collection program for mercury thermostats. It's easy to comply with disposal, as mentioned with the Universal Waste Rule. We have, in some cases, a free program or cost-neutral program to assist with managing these devices, no matter which 48 states that you reside in. Lastly, this is an example of what state legislation has been put in place regarding the management of mercury switch thermostats. So you can take a few moments here and review this chart if your state is listed. Generally speaking, the mercury switch thermostats there are sales bans in accordance with those. There's an installation ban in some states where you may not install them anymore. There's also disposal bans. But for those on the call or listening to this may have a question about, are you in a state that, whether you're an HVAC wholesaler or whether you're a HVAC contractor, what is your role in managing end-of-life mercury thermostats? Because you can see the states listed here, you may have a certain requirement. As far as the framework went for developing these model bills for mercury thermostats for the legislation, they followed a three-legged stool of responsibility approach. The manufacturers, the HVAC wholesalers, and the contractors all had a role in profiting from mercury thermostats. Profit is not a dirty word, but it does bear responsibility. So in the eyes of the law, these three legs of the stool were important for management, and all three had to be involved with the take-back of these devices. So what you see with manufacturers, they made mercury thermostats. They were required to provide funding to Thermostat Recycling Corporation, depending on the state. Second leg of the stool was HVAC wholesalers. They profited when they sold these devices to contractors. Thus, they were the distributors of the thermostat, and thus they also should be acting as a collection point, either voluntary or mandatory, depending on the state regulation. They also may have a role, depending on the state, with outreach and also educating contractors about their responsibility to recycling these. The last leg of the stool is the HVAC contractor, or otherwise known as the generator of the waste. In some cases, this may be a residential HVAC contractor. This may be a utility-funded energy implementer. This could be a homeowner. Whoever has generated the waste is responsible for recycling it. They may have installed it, but they may or may not have installed it, but they are responsible for recycling it. They have to return it to a collection point, in this case, in this framework, to the wholesale distributor. So the question we get asked often is, who is actually generating most of this waste of Mercury switch thermostats? The trade channel accounts for approximately 90% of new thermostat sales. That actually correlates very well with who is generating the waste of Mercury switch thermostats. Those contractors, the last ones to touch the device, whether it's for setting of it, for managing of it, for the warrantying of the device, tend to be the ones that are removing it from service. These products were available at retail, but this is not a retail product, unlike CFLs and batteries, because it required a level of installation knowledge and understanding of how to remove it once it's ready to be recycled and also be ready to be replaced. So programs such as the Thermostat Recycling Corporation focuses on who we would call the primary generator, those that generate the most amount of these switches and not the one-offs that potentially could be from a homeowner, etc. So in conclusion of this presentation today, it is the responsibility of recycling Mercury thermostats, and it lies in the hands of the generator of the waste. If you touch it, you remove it, you've disconnected it, you have 1 year's time in some states to recycle it in a residential building, and in a commercial building, you're required to recycle it no matter who touches it. Must be recycled in the 48 states. 2, Mercury is nothing to play with because of this legislation. Some cases there are fines and fees associated with non-compliance. It's also unsafe for fetuses, for those females and wives that are eating shrimp and shellfish and things. The legislation is put into place to protect us. It's public policy. 3, all members in the channel are important, as demonstrated in this presentation today. They're important for the proper disposal. All 3 profited. All 3 must be involved. Without them, the leg doesn't stand. So I want to thank those that listened to this presentation today. Feel free to reach out to the Thermostat Recycling Corporation with additional questions you have by visiting the www.thermostat-recycle.org. Have a great day.